On Sunday, 28 July 2024, the people of Venezuela went to the polls to express their democratic right in the country's presidential elections. The outcome saw President Nicolas Maduro emerge victorious with a majority win. On election day in Caracas, we sat down with Zolani Mkiva from South Africa, a longtime friend of the Bolivarian Republic and its process of socialist construction. From Venezuela to South Africa, Cuba and Palestine, Zolani has always centered the importance of cultural work, using music, poetry and art in an act of solidarity and internationalism. In the context of a new period of US-backed imperialist aggression against Venezuela, learning from experiences of revolutionary arts and culture has become increasingly important.
My name is Zolani Mkiva, and first and foremost, I am an artist, a poet and a producer, and I also play some role in the leadership as the Secretary General of the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, on the one hand as the President of the South African Solidarity Union of Venezuela, SASUVE. And of course, I'm an activist, and I see myself as part of the progressive revolutions in the continent of Africa, the mother continent, as well as our friends, countries that have got historical friendship, who supported our cause for our own liberation as Africa. So that's me in a nutshell, yeah. I'm an oral traditional poet, primarily. And when I was young, I grew up in an environment where we were rallying our people for the liberation, educating them about the South African political situation during the yoke of apartheid. And so I rose into the public as a traditional poet in Bold. And in the main, as you know, Nelson Mandela was a rallying name for our liberation in South Africa. So most of my poetry was about the articulation of the struggle of South Africa, conscientizing the youth. And so on, that culminated in me becoming, Nelson Mandela's poet laureate. Then I thought that it was very key for me to move or diversify my poetry into music, into the arts in general. And the relationship that I had with Madiba, which was very much robust, led to me meeting other icons, like Arafat, like Gaddafi, like Castro. But besides the meetings, our struggle itself has always been inspired by these figures. Because when you mentioned Mandela, Nelson Mandela was always equated with other revolutionaries who were leading, their own liberation struggles in their respective countries. So even in the poetry, when I salute Mandela, I would quote Castro, I would quote Arafat, and other key figures, iconic leaders, in the revolution, as it were. So that led to me to actually composing, salutations or dedication. So I did a tribute to Fidel Castro, internationalist, and that became an international single, an album, which I actually produced and released and made it available online, and actually went to Cuba to launch it. Yeah. Similarly, I did a homage to Comrade Hugo Chavez, a very inspiring leader who himself was inspired by Castro, but became, an enterprising revolutionary who captured, the eyes and the ears of the international Iranian, influencing many people across the length and the breadth of Africa. And his articulation, he was so prolific, so much so that he even told us that in his bloodline, he has African blood. He has blood relations with many communities around the world. And that resonates with us, So he saw himself as part of us, so we saw him as part of us. And that led to me writing and producing an album which is a homage to him, Revolutionario. And it carries that song, which is a homage to Hugo Chavez, but there's also a secondary a song which says, Caracas, here we come. So I believe it's important that we foreground the arts in any given revolution, because any revolution as a political approach is basically foregrounded by cultural revolution. And in that way, you make it to resonate with ordinary people, because the artistic expression represent the views of the ordinary people that are articulated into concise artistic and idiomatic expression for ease of reference. So you simplify the revolution for even the ordinary people, because it is normally known that the intelligentsia are at the top of leading the revolution. But how do you simplify the messaging from leadership to the people? How also do you simplify the expectations of the people into a message that is carried to the leadership? This is the role that the arts play through that artistic expression. But you also create, the vibrancy and the dynamism by producing works that are further going to ensure that you engrave the message through music, through poetry, and through the rhythm of what you produce, so that people get used to that. So that helps to sort of not only to condition, but to conscientize. Education which is done in a manner that makes it easy for people to consume, because you add certain spices which are artistic and so on, you help to consolidate the message even further, to spread the word.
Let me dedicate this rendition to the great anaconda of the great Amazon River, Comrade Hugo Chavez, and Presidente Yamato. Venezuela, viva, viva, viva Chavez.
You know, when we were growing up, even at high school, in the politics of COSAS, and at university in the politics of SANSCO and SASCO, we were always doing toy, what we call it tabula. You know, who left guitar, who left, who write, that kind of thing. And then the names of the leaders, Nelson Mandela, you know, the freedom fighter, Fidel Castro, the commander. You know, those are the things that we grew up in the toy dance that we're doing. So when I then dedicated the album to Fidel Castro, it was partly inspired by what I grew up doing. But I wanted it to manifest into a product which could be available in Cuba and that way. And this became unprecedented and historic in the sense that never before has an African artist produced a complete album dedicated to Cubans to express appreciation for their support to our liberation struggle. And it was an appreciation coming from an ordinary artist who represents ordinary people. It was not an album which was commissioned or authorized by leadership. I did it voluntarily without any support for, you know, any material or kind support that came to say, produce this thing. I put my own resources and did it because I did it out of love. Because here is Fidel Castro, who is many miles away from us, not even in our ocean, in the Caribbean. But he saw a need to export love and give us the much needed support, not only through his words, even though his words were so profound in inspiring us to take up arms against the apartheid regime. But he went on to actually dispatch, you know, military contingents to go to Africa to fight, putting boots on the ground, fighting for us, hearing that the hundreds of thousands of Cuban soldiers actually fought on our side in the Battle of Quitocuno Valley, and which led us to defeating the apartheid state. To me, that was the most inspiring thing done by a leader like Fidel Castro. So for me, this was not just a leader of words. This is a leader who ensured that his words were followed by action. And he did this not to benefit anything, not to get anything as a reward, you understand? He just did it because of his pure commitment to humanity, as a peace-loving leader, as a freedom-loving leader, as a leader who was in pursuit of freedom and liberation for all the toiling masses of the world. And that's how he entrenched this relationship that is so historic, that we maintain it to date, many years after, you know, he has passed on. And that is really what inspired me to do this album. I did it and I gave it my all. And I ensured that I did not work alone. I was directing it, I was producing it, but I invited other artists on the ground to come and join us. I remember that I even invited an artist from Haiti who came from the same region to actually feature in this. And this album, I made it to really relive that experience of the toy songs that we were singing when we were young. Because in it, the main song to Castro, it has that toy rhythm. Fidel Castro, commander, Fidel Castro, General. So it's there. And it was just meant to say to the Cubans, we really appreciate it. We know that Fidel Castro didn't do this as a thankful exercise, but it is also not a thankless exercise. And therefore, I had to do that expression. And the level of reception which this album was received by both the people and the leadership was amazing. This album, I officially presented it to Deputy President Lasso of Cuba. I presented it to the Minister of Arts and Culture. I presented it to the Ambassador of Cuba in South Africa. I flew to Cuba to go and officially present this album to the masses of the people there. I shot the aspects of the video of this album in Cuba, in Havana. So for me, it will always be there, as a historical record of appreciation to the Cuban people, because no one on earth has ever done what Castro, his government, and his people has done, literally to give us all form of support, taking from nothing, but making something so incredible and so impactful. Yeah.
Compañero Fidel Castro, comandante en jefe. Compañero Fidel Castro, comandante en jefe. The giant of Cuba has spoken with great vigor and zeal of the revolution. Compañero Fidel Castro, the commander-in-chief of the international Cuban forces. Solidarity in action, solidarity forever.
Revolucionario,
Fidel Castro vive! Déjame! ¡Yo! Castro quiero la solidaridad. Fidel Castro, hombre fuerte. Castro quiero la solidaridad. Fidel Castro, hombre fuerte. Oye, Castro, la solidaridad. Oye, Castro, la solidaridad. Revolucionario, internacionalista, hombre fuerte, Fidel Castro. Revolucionario, internacionalista, hombre fuerte, Fidel Castro. Revolucionario, internacionalista, hombre fuerte, Fidel Castro. Revolucionario, internacionalista, hombre fuerte, Fidel Castro.
The genocidal isolation of Cuba, Venezuela, and other governments which don't see eye to eye with the American imperialism and the European imperialism is something that is more than just unfair. It is something that represents a sophisticated form of coloniality, where oppression, repression, and suppression is being implemented through an instrument called the sanctions. Basically, the sanction is an expression by colonialists to say your wealth and your country doesn't belong to you. It belongs to them, and they have every right to do what they wish to do with that country. And because Cuba and Venezuela and like-minded countries, they are very determined and very strong in terms of what they represent, insofar as their independence, insofar as their original thinking, insofar as, foregrounding their national interests to the extent that they would say to hell with anyone who want to interfere, with our country processes and with our country wealth. So they are suffering that consequence of standing their ground in declaring their independence, in thinking, in action, in policy formulation, and every respect. And I think it is important that the people of the world and the progressive governments of the world, together with the progressive formations of several countries, that we must come and pledge our solidarity with these countries. In fact, this message comes very strongly in all my songs, in all my productions that I have done for Cuba and Venezuela. There is a clear expression that says solidarity in action, solidarity forever. And we are foregrounding that because these are just not praise songs. These are songs of liberation. To say it is important for the world not to look away when the people of Cuba are suffering unfairly so. It is important for the people of the world to rally around. And their rallying around should not only be limited to picketing and marches. We must actually do tangible stuff to express our solidarity with them. If it means that we must send humanitarian interventions, let's do that. If it means that we must enter into social pact, which says that we must take some of the engineers and the doctors from those countries and they must come and make interventions in our society, and we return the favor by way of sending resources, medication, and other things. These are the things that we ought to do. But more than that, it calls upon the states that are supposed to support these countries to think about alternatives insofar as the finance systems. We can't be dependent on a dollar economy. Let's think about de-dollarizing the economy of the world as the progressive governments We can't continue with business as usual. We have to come to a point where we talk about business unusual. And for me, it calls upon us to immediately try to employ, a very creative way of looking into the economics of the world in this day and age. We cannot romanticize the international finance system, which is based on the colonial approach to finance, where Western countries are actually calling the shots in determining everything, including the value of the currencies of the countries that they hate. Because if they wake up on the bad side of the bed, then they declare your currency with no value. So it can't be like that. So I think we must think very creatively. We must think in a manner that is revolutionary in saying that an alternative is required. And I think what we have seen in countries like Russia and China, it's something to go by. I think it needs to be emulated. And I think for me, a revolution of the current era must be thinking at that supra level to undermine coloniality, with intelligence, which is at a supra level, where we surprise them, with these policy interventions. We mobilize the world, for instance, if I may make an example, as South Africa, by using the arts as an instrument of mobilization, of international mobilization, of mobilizing international solidarity. Big guns like Miriam Makeba, Huma Sekela, Letambuli, Kaifa Semenya, Johnny Clerk, and many others helped us to bring to the attention of the world the suffering of the people of South Africa, and by association, the suffering of the people of Africa. We need to do the same. And that's why I've been consistent in ensuring that I do this with absolute compassion and passion. Even when it comes to the issue of Palestine, sometimes I pick up on the icons of these countries. Maybe you are not aware that I did a dedication to Yasser Arafat entitled The Lion of Jerusalem. The intention, the chorus of the song, it says, "Free Palestine."
Parmi les grands leaders tués, Yasser, Arafat. Free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. Let the peace in West Bank. Yeah, Palestine, yeah, Palestine, yeah, Palestine.
And we need to say to those who produce amapiano and those who produce other sounds, from Nigeria to Kenya and so on, let's use that creative material and ensure that the content entailed in there actually constitutes a message of peace, a message of justice, a message of freedom, and a message of liberating all those that are still suffering under the yoke of oppression and suppression. For me, like I say, the arts is the best instrument and the best vehicle to transport the message, to reach the destiny as soon as possible. We are here in Venezuela, and we think that the loyalty and the discipline of a people to their own cause is something that is a very important currency for any success of the revolution. Well, Frantz Fanon puts it very clearly that any generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover their mission right? And all that they need to do is to ensure that they either secure that or betray it. And for me, that you cannot afford any form of betrayal of your own mission. You have to do everything that you can to ensure that you achieve your objective. And ours as revolutionaries is to fight with every inch of salt that we have in our bodies to ensure that the revolution always succeeds, because the revolution acts, on the basis of the best interest of the people, the toiling masses. Yes, the toiling masses are the they are the commanders of any revolution. Those that we refer to sometimes as commanders, they are more like custodians, but the real commanders are the masses.